Alright, welcome back everyone. Today we're going to be going over the second and third objective, and maybe more depending how much time we take. And just to recap, last we went over was the first objective, and that'll be the first menu to interact with. And as we go down, you can see we don't have much, we just have some shell of some methods built out here. So let's go ahead and test this out. Oops. And see if this works. Perfect. Okay, so first we have done this very first objective of displaying a menu in the console for the user to interact with. Now I'm going to create a default array of hashes that represent items at a grocery store. So we can do this, obviously a few different ways, but let's just keep it simple for now. I'm going to create an instance variable that is holding an array of hashes. So maybe we'll call it items, or maybe we'll do food items. And it's going to go array, and I'm just going to throw some hashes in here, and we will do an item as a key value, and we will do a price as another key value. I'm going to leave the price just as a whole integer just to make it a little easier for us. Add a comma, and let's bring those down. We can change some of these. Just some random things, and then inside of here I'm going to create some strings. And why don't we do, I'm a pescatarian / vegetarian, so we'll just do a bunch of veggies. So we'll do, I don't know how to spell broccoli, but there it is. We'll do some squash. And let's be honest, I mostly eat carbs. So bread, pasta. I've also been into juicing, so we'll do a juice. Keep that vague. And we will do kale. Nice. Alright, so we have created a default array of hashes that represent items at a grocery store. Cool. Let's add items to a user's grocery cart. That sounds like that's going to go into our add items method. So before we, dive into this, first of all, I shelled out a bunch of different puts for each of these methods just to see if we hit it. I'm definitely going to change this and make use of our username above. So maybe I'll do something like an interpolation that says, all right, if I can spell it correctly. All right, at username, what item would you like to add to your cart? And let's just really spell it out for the user that this is where they are. Now we need to grab my array, food items, and loop through my array. The simplest way that we can do this to loop through all our food items array, as well as make it flexible and make it so that it can grow, so that if we were to add a new item to our array, we wouldn't have to go in and hard code 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So to do that, why don't we just go ahead and I think it was food items. Yes. All right. So we're going to do food items dot each with index. We're going to do a do. This starts our loop, and I'm just going to end it before I forget. Now, I think this part is where students can get the most confused of what we put inside these pipes. It's going to change with whatever our mapping or looping method we choose here. Each with index will be different than just each. But for this specific case, I'm doing each with index. Now, the first item or argument that I put in these pipes is going to represent each object inside of our array. So what would I call each one of these objects? I'd probably call it a piece of food or an item or whatever. I'm going to do an item. Actually, why don't we do food? And the second argument is going to be index. Now you could do index or I for short. You can even do F for short for food. However, I would suggest to not obviously do I short for item and I short for index. I would try and keep your variable starting with different letters. It will make things simpler so you don't confuse yourself. So I'm going to do food. You might even do food item. It's a little long to me. I'm going to do food and index, and I'm just going to spell that out so you guys can see exactly what that's doing. Now, whatever I put inside this line on line 59 between my do and my end, it is going to do for as many times as I do have objects or items in my array. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to do something 6 times until it's done mapping each with index through my array. So if I do puts, hello there, General Kenobi, that's a Star Wars thing, obviously. And if I run this, put in my name and I go shopping, it's going to say hello there, General Kenobi 6 times because we have 6 objects in our array. But that doesn't make any sense to do any Star Wars things here. So I am going to interpolate my index. And remember, index starts at 0. So if I do index, and I'm going to do a little parentheses just to give it some space, why don't we see what that looks like? Friendo, press go shopping. We get 0 to 5. As a user, starting at 0 doesn't make too much sense. So I'm actually going to start at 1. By doing that, I can increase +1. This doesn't actually change the index. This just changes how the user perceives the index. But I don't only want to just show the index, I also want to show the food item. But I can't just write food, obviously. I need to first say food. Now, this little bit might get a little confusing, and I like to go into a little bit of detail just to explain how I view arrays and hashes in Ruby specifically, and throughout your career as a programmer or developer. If we can think of almost every single array or objects or whatever variable as a box. So first, we are inside of our food items box. This is a big box. It even looks like a box. If I close this array, so we have our food items box. Inside of this, I have 6 other unnamed boxes, and we have named them down below right here. Each of these now essentially equals food. Now, I've only gone inside food items here. Food is how I reach my hand into another box. I'm inside this box now. But if I want to get inside item or price, I have to definitively tell myself, the code or the user, I'm going inside that box. So we go inside food items. We go inside food items box. We go inside each item or food box, but now I want to go a level further, and I need to either say I'm going into the item or the price box. And we can just do that like so. So let's give this a test. Remember, I'm going back and forth and testing my code very often. And there we go. Now, I don't only have to do the item here. I can maybe do the price as well. So interpolate, going inside the food box again, but instead of choosing the item, I'm going to choose price. I can put a $sign here, and because above I did a bunch of whole numbers instead of integers, just for fancy's sake, I'm going to add a .00. So why don't we see what this looks like? Cool. So we have our index, we have our food item, and our food price. Now I want to give the user an option to choose one of these. It's pretty clear, just like I chose for the menu, that I need to choose an option either 1 through 6. So we're going to put outside of our loop, because if I do a gets inside here, we're going to hit that gets for every single item in our array. So make sure to do it after your array, or I'm sorry, your loop. And why don't we say item choice equals a gets. We're going to do a strip to I. very similar to what we did above in our main menu. We want the user to choose a very specific number. Now, why don't we get to this point and I'll show you where my thought process is. Go shopping. Now we've hit our gets. Now I could choose broccoli, squash, kale, whatever. I'm going to choose broccoli, the number 1. So when I press 1 and I press enter, that is essentially submitting the number 1 to equal our item choice. Or when I press 3 or 5 or 6, item choice is storing that information. It ends, of course, but so now with this item choice being represented as a number, I can grab a specific index with that number in my food items array. So let me just show you what I mean. If I do a puts you chose, and I'm outside of food items, so I'm not going to use food anymore. I'm going to use food items. So if I do you chose at food items, and I'm going to remember, if we want to grab an index and an array, we do some square brackets, and item choice is now a number. So I'm going to do item choice, and first I'm going to show you what that looks like. So if I go shopping and I choose 1, yikes, 1, this is not correct, right? I chose 1 and I'm expecting to choose broccoli. Give you a second to maybe think about why that is and how we can change this. When I say item choice and I press 1, the code doesn't care that I've increased 1 here. It's going to grab the true index of 1. Broccoli's index is 0. Squash's index is 1. So even though the user thinks it's choosing broccoli, it's really choosing squash. So we're actually going to make that, make that index correct again by subtracting 1 here. And that's going to fix the index issue. I'm also going to go in and say item. Let's take a look. What is your name, friend? Harlan. Nice. If I say 4 for pasta, you chose pasta. Awesome. But this doesn't actually do any logic. All this is saying is you chose this item. I need to actually do some logic to push that choice into something. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to push this into a new array, maybe called cart. I'm going to put that up here. I'm going to leave it as an empty array because if I were to put anything else in here, it would already exist. I want to leave this empty. So why don't we push? We're essentially going to be using this exact same thing. I'm going to take at cart, and we're going to push this. I am including the item because I'm actually going to keep my price and my items separately. So as well as cart, I'm going to say total. I'm going to clone this down, change this to total, and instead of item, I'm going to do price. And then send them back to main menu. And you know what? I'm just going to even be a little explicit here. I'm going to say you chose this item, and let's throw this in some interpolation. All right. So you chose food items, number of where we are in our array, whatever index we chose, and the item. Again, this line right here is not doing any logic. I'm just being fancy and I'm saying, all right, you chose this item and this is going in. These two lines, 67 and 68, are where I'm actually doing that. So let's go back. Let's do kale. You chose kale. The cost of $9 has been added to your total cost. And it just sends me back to main menu. as well as grabbing our name again. So that's something we'll fix. Let's go over this in the next video.